Hey, welcome to this lecture about camera support systems where we explore some options that we have beyond tripods. Now you might think that this is a camera department topic, but it's actually a grip department topic. The grip department is really in charge of setting up anything that the camera is going to reside on. So let's take a look first at tripods, which is our basic solid foundation that we've been using since DVA141. And the tripod, you know, even though there's all sorts of options, the tripod really reigns supreme as sort of the Swiss Army knife of camera support. It's the thing that we go to sort of by default. Improvements have been made over the years, but the basic design remains unchanged since the earliest days of photography. It's 3 legs. It somehow holds up the camera. It's got some kind of mounting system, and really, there's not too many ways that you can improve the tripod. Some things that we may see on certain tripod models are things like the spreader. Helps keep the legs steady, keeps them from slipping, keeps them at a particular angle. They can be built in or they can be added on. Sometimes spreaders will have wheels and they'll be able to function as a makeshift dolly, although generally their movement is not very smooth. On top of the legs, you've got some kind of a head system. There's usually 3 different types here: the friction heads, fluid heads, and gear heads. Heads have a couple of different ways to attach to the top of the legs. The flat base, which is what we've seen on our DVA101 tripods, or the ball joint or claw ball setup, which is what we see on our carbon fiber tripods at UAT. Now, fluid heads, as you have come to know them from DVA101 and from this semester, they use a hydraulic resistance system to keep your movement smooth, and fluid heads are generally what's considered best for video. All of our tripods here at UAT have fluid heads. On big motion picture sets, you're going to see geared heads that utilize a mechanical gear system for smooth, precise, repeatable movements where pan and tilt are controlled by these 2 separate hand cranks. And typically these are going to be for 35mm, 65mm motion picture cameras and for your larger format digital cinema cameras. Now, a device that we'll start using this semester is the CineSaddle. This is touted by its maker, Cinekinetic, as the tripod killer, because essentially you can turn any flat surface, anywhere that you could put the bag, you can turn into essentially a tripod. Makes for some very versatile shots. You know, if you need to get low-angle shots, or you need to put your camera on a piece of furniture, on a desk, on a tabletop next to your actors, something like that. It also is really handy in that it comes with, I mean, obviously it's fairly low tech, right? It's just a beanbag, and it's designed to cradle the camera. But what it comes with is a number of tie downs and brackets and things like that that make it versatile as a car mount. It's actually really useful as a car mount. We'll be exploring this in class and rigging it to a car. And you can put it on the hood, you can put it on the roof, you can put it on the trunk. There's even ways that you can put it on the door to get sideways shots. There's some videos that I put in the eCollege site in this grip department module. You can go ahead and check those out and show you a little bit more about how the CineSaddle works, how the vehicle mount system works, and show you some different kinds of shots that you can get with the CineSaddle. Now, the thing that I want you to start thinking about in your videos is how to get your camera moving. Okay, the static tripod shots that we've used in DVA101, they can be kind of boring. Cinema really is all about movement, and if you can move the camera, you can create energy and you can bring life to the scene, and you can use that camera movement to alter the audience's perception and affect their psychological response to a shot. Obviously, as we've talked about composition, different compositions have different effects on an audience, and if you have a shot that begins in one type of composition and then ends in a different type of composition through a movement, through a cinematic movement, the meaning of the shot can change over time and affect the audience differently. Now, if we're moving the camera, in other words, if we're not doing handheld movement, if we're moving the camera, we need special gear, and that's really where the grip department comes in. A dolly is any device that lets you put the camera on wheels, and these are great for tracking shots, for push-ins, pull-outs, for following action. There's a lot of different kinds of dollies. One that you'll see in the motion picture and television industry is the Fisher dolly. It's a pretty standard piece of equipment. It uses a pedestal system in here. It's first of all, it's really compact, although it's incredibly heavy. It's requires a truck to move it. It's not something that you would be able to throw in the back of your compact car as a student. So it's really kind of a studio piece of equipment. It has this pedestal that raises up and down, so you can change the height of the camera, and you can even change the height of the camera dynamically during the shot. All four wheels can be used for steering. They can either be locked in a straight line, or two wheels can be used to steer, or four wheels can be used to steer for a tight radius, or you can set all of the wheels to turn sideways, so you can begin a move going forward and then crab sideways, left or right. It can be used with tracks or without tracks. It's an incredibly versatile piece of equipment, and actually requires quite a bit of training to get the hang of it. It has all these different levers for brakes and for steering options. So it's not quite as easy as just a platform on wheels. Now, if you want a simple platform on wheels, that's what this thing is. This is a doorway dolly, like what we have in the UAT studio. And essentially, it's just a plywood platform with some kind of wheel system and some kind of a steering rig on it. And it's really, really simple. This is called a doorway dolly because it's designed to fit through a standard doorway. And you'll see it fits pretty easily through all the doors on campus. Some other inexpensive dollies you might find is the good old Robert Rodriguez favorite, the wheelchair, or by using something like the Cinesaddle, you can turn a car. You can basically turn anything with wheels into a dolly by using the Cinesaddle. Something we'll talk about in class are the pork chops. These are additional plywood boards that are used to extend the width of a dolly. They're called pork chops because they kind of look like the cut of meat, the pork chop. And note that when you put one or more pork chops, right? Normally a dolly comes with two. They stow underneath. You pull them out, and then you fit them into pipes on the side of the dolly. And once you've got one on there or both, it's now no longer a doorway dolly. It won't fit through a door. So keep that in mind when you're using your pork chops. Another device that we'll look at in class is the jib, and a jib is a counterweighted arm that allows camera movement up and down as well as in an arc orbiting the pivot point. And they are mounted typically on a tripod or on a pedestal. We'll mount ours on a tripod, and so we can actually use the pan tilt head on the tripod to orbit the entire rig around, and then the jib itself creates this up and down movement, and weights are used to counterweight the weight of the camera. It's all about creating this balance so that the camera almost becomes weightless and can be pushed around very easily and fluidly. Another class of camera movement equipment is stabilizers. We're not going to get into stabilizers too much in this class, but I want you to be aware of them. Most of them utilize balance and utilize these pretty slick gimbal joints to kind of make the camera into this weightless rig. Obviously, it weighs a lot more once we put on all this stuff, but the idea is that the camera itself, its center of gravity has been lowered significantly, so it has a tendency to dampen bounces and jarring movements that the camera operator might introduce to the movement. And all stabilizers in some way mimic the Oscar-winning Steadicam invented by this fella Garrett Brown. You can click on this link to learn more about Mr. Brown. He actually has created a lot of really cool camera rigs, and his inventions have revolutionized the way movies are shot, the way televised sports is shot. It seems like every year or every other year at the Olympics, Garrett Brown has invented some new camera technology to shoot whatever athletic event he has decided to work on for the year. He's created dive cameras and cable cameras that fly over football fields and all kinds of cool stuff. So you should definitely check him out. Alright, so let's talk about the different classes of camera movements. Obviously, with a tripod you can pan, which is to rotate right or left, or you can tilt, which is to rotate up or down. And this is what you've been doing in DVA141. Going forward, we need to start thinking about what we can do with a dolly. So with a dolly, we can push dolly or truck in, pull dolly or truck out. We can dolly, track, or crab right or left. And then we can also do this thing called a back pan, where the dolly's moving in one direction and our tripod head is panning in the other. And this is a typical dolly move when we're trying to orbit around a character. We'll practice this in class. Another type of dolly move is the drift or the creep, where the dolly is moving incredibly slowly. In fact, it may be moving so slowly that the audience is not at first aware that a move is happening. When we use a jib, we can boom up, down, left, or right. So these are our verbs that we should be using all the time. Pan, tilt, push, dolly, truck, crab, drift, creep, back pan, and boom, up, down, left, right. We can also mount the camera on a jib, mount the jib on a tripod, mount the tripod on the dolly. And now we have the ability to move the camera in a number of different axes. We can roll the entire platform forward or backward. We can orbit the camera around, and we can raise the camera up and down. And if we also add a pan tilt head on the end of the jib, we can pan tilt there. So really the camera essentially just becomes a flying camera that we can move almost anywhere it wants, obviously within the limits of the hardware that it's mounted on. But it really frees up the camera and makes it so that it's not locked down, it's not static, but it's also not handheld. So it has a very fluid, professional type of look. Some safety and good practice we need to talk about. Always use sandbags and tie downs to secure the tripod to the dolly, especially when using the jib. This is not only a safety thing for you and your crew and your cast, but it's also a safety thing to keep the equipment safe. So make sure, as we have in this picture, you've got sandbags on the 3 legs, and you can't see it, but there's a tie down. There's a bungee cord tying the center of this tripod down to the down to the dolly. This is the best picture I could find, so unfortunately we don't see it, but I'll demo that in class. When space permits, you should add a pork chop or more to widen your dolly and allow your tripod to take a wider, more stable stance. Obviously, the wider the legs on the tripod are, the more stable it is. Okay, if you have to narrow in the legs to accommodate the small footprint of the dolly in its standard config, then the tripod has a tendency to be top heavy. So if we can make those legs wider, we can lower the center of gravity, and usually the only way we can do that is by adding the pork chops. When you're using the dolly, no more than 2 people on the dolly at once. Okay, really, I'd like it if you just kept it down to 1 person on the dolly at a time. But sometimes for long tracking shots, you're going to need your camera operator and your director, let's say, or maybe even your sound guy. So keep it to 2 people. And when the dolly is being moved, it's customary to let everyone on set know by calling "dolly is moving" or "dolly moves." Obviously not during a take, but when you're moving the dolly during blocking or during setup, or just to move it from one place of the set to another in between shots, you need to let people know so that they know this big heavy piece of equipment is rolling through the set. So we'll look at all these things in class and experiment with them, and what I really want you to do is start thinking about how you can use the dolly, the cinesaddle, and the jib, or some configuration thereof, to make your shots much more cinematic and add movement to your films.